Vampires is the deck that got a huge boost from Core Set 2020 and likely will not survive rotation.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Vampire Clan's majority makeup comes from Ixalan block, so I'm not sure if Sorin, I know
Imperious
Imperious
Bloodlord?
Bloodlord. I know it's the Bloodlord. Come on. It's not my fault. Just call it something different.
Just Sorin probably plays.
The Sorin. Anyway, once these vampires rotate, there's going to be a need for a lot of decent vampires in the next set for Sorin to be good. But there's a chance that, 6 months from now, there's another set with a couple of really strong vampires. Maybe Vampire Lacerator gets a reprint. Maybe you see just really leaning heavily on stuff like Dust Legion Zealot to fill the curve. But I think the real draw for this vampire deck is Sorin Imperious Bloodlord, minusing to put in Champion of Dusk.
We see Julian John on the play. He shocked on turn 1 for Knight of the Ebon Legion. Turn 2, he had a Danto Vanguard. He did not pay the life to get the counter on the Knight. Remember, Knight of the Ebon Legion checks at the end step on your turn. If a player has lost 4 more life, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Capstick's going to start with a turn 2 Hero of Precinct 1, but John has that turn 3 Sorin, and that's Knight of Dusk. That's a draw 3.
Yeah, Champion of Dusk is a really strong card here. Off of that, Sorin Imperious Bloodlord. Gaining 3 extra cards at the cost of 3 life. And now a swing in here with a Danto Vanguard, and things are looking pretty bad for Capstick.
So there's an attack for 3. You got to figure Capstick will not be blocking that one. He'll fall to 16 here.
Yeah, now let's see if Julian wants to pay the life, and he chooses not to, once again.
Yeah, the Knight of Ebon Legion still kind of small, but not looking like a huge factor in this game. He still has the Sorin, he has the 4/4 Champion of Dusk.
Yeah, it's really hard to block mid-combat. The trick is if Capstick holds up mana, effectively it says that Julian just can't really attack with the Knight of Ebon Legion, because if he does go for a pump, some sort of removal spell could knock it out before combat damage.
We'll see what Capstick can do on turn number 3. He was able to successfully untap with Heroes Precinct 1, kind of the most important thing for this deck.
Looks like we got a Tyrant Scorn on Capstick's side. He's trying to maybe figure out when to best utilize this. He can bounce his Hero Precinct 1 in response to the plus kind of Lightning Helix from the Sorin Imperious Bloodlord if he wants. Or he can kind of main phase it, kill one of these creatures, and create an extra blocker.
Drowned Catacombs land for turn, no main phase action. He'll pass back to John. Let's see how John can go about pressing his advantage here. Got to be wary that Capstick's up to something with all that untapped mana.
Yeah, but it's a pretty safe attack with a Danto Vanguard and Champion of Dusk. Very little can actually go wrong. And if you plus a Sorin Imperious Bloodlord on the Knight of Ebon Legion, you can swing with that as well without really putting a whole lot of investment into it mana-wise.
Plains will be land number 4 for John.
I think John is trying to figure out if he wants to play a Vampire pre-combat and then kind of fling it at the Hero Precinct 1.
Looking at casting some kind of 2-mana spell here.
So Dusk Legion Zealot, that kind of proxy for Elvish Visionary that deals you damage.
So we'll go to 15 and draw a card. Elvish Visionary type effects with relevant creature types. More powerful than they look.
Yeah, for sure. You see like Elvish Visionary and Standard was never like a huge deal, but when you get to Modern and Legacy, where the creature type Elf matters, it becomes a lot more powerful. And in this deck, being a vampire means that you get to fling it with Imperious Bloodlord, means it draws an extra card from Champion of Dusk, means it gets pumped by Legion Lieutenant. Just a good card.
Here's a Sky Marcher Aspirant.
Well, the life total's kind of backwards there. We're going to get that fixed for you. 16 for Capstick, 12 for Julian. He's done himself a good bit of damage here with Imperious Bloodlord and really only dealt one attack with the Danto Vanguard.
So now he'll shove with the Sorin. He's going to sacrifice that Zealot to try to hit the hero. Tyrant Scorn will go ahead and destroy the Knight of the Ebon Legion.
And that puts John back up to 15. But it deals with a creature that could have been a little bit problematic, while also giving him a blocker here for either of these creatures if he so chooses.
Before that all went down, John did hit the City's Blessing, so that Aspirant does fly. And here's an attack with the Champion of Dusk and the Adanto Vanguard. Capstick has 1 token for the Hero Precinct 1 off that Tyrant Scorn. See if he wants to block at all.
Capstick's in the tank, and this is only turn 3, man.
The Vampire deck really gets on the table quickly. He'll put the token in front of the Adanto Vanguard. John's going to pay 4 life, so he'll go to 11. 4 damage also hitting Capstick. He'll go to 12.
I like that. I like that block a lot. It kind of restricts the life total of Julian just a little bit. Makes it so he gets as effectively 1 less shield to put on the Adanto Vanguard. And you're only preventing 1 more damage if you block the Champion of Dusk. It probably won't matter in the long run, but the fact that it could matter means that might have been like a high percentage play based on the spot you're in.
Post-combat, John had another Sky Marcher Aspirant. Now we'll see what Capstick can do about it.
He's really far behind here. The Sorin Imperious Bloodlord can pitch any of these vampires and clear the way. But, Julian can also just plus on the Imperious Bloodlord on one of the Sky Marcher Aspirants, shove in for 10 damage, and hold one of the Sky Marcher Aspirants back.
So Capstick's going to gain 3 life to 15 and draw a card with this Elite Guard Mage, but that's a 3 toughness creature. The Sorin can take care of that.
Yeah, it looks like he actually has a Legion Lieutenant here, which is pretty powerful considering a lot of these creatures weren't going to be able to attack through that Elite Guard Mage 2/3 toughness.
Yeah, there is Legion Lieutenant, as you said. John now thinking about what he wants to do with the Sorin, what the combat step looks like.
Probably wants to pump the Adanto Vanguard, since that one's going to be the hardest for Capstick to kill, but he also gains the most life if he targets Champion of Dusk, and he kind of spread around his damage if he targets the Sky Marcher Aspirant.
So he puts a counter on one of the Sky Marcher Aspirants and goes ahead and attacks with everything here.
He's also going to gain back 4 life, back up to 15, so no matter how Capstick blocks, it's not going to be too effective. Still taking a chunk of damage.
And this attack is 416, so Capstick has to block something.
Yeah, his only profitable block is a trade with the currently 3/2 Sky Marcher Aspirant because the 4/3 is a little out of range. 5/9, force 13. So he's going to force a life pay again from Julian John.
Yeah, jumps in front of the Vanguard. So John falls to 7, activating the Vanguard. And then we have 12 coming across, Capstick to 3.
And unfortunately, I don't think that there is a way out here. Yeah, I've been wrong before, though.
The game's kind of just been getting a little bit tighter every turn. Champion of Dusk is really tough to deal with. The Adanto Vanguard, nearly impossible. You can gain life with something like Oath of Kaya, but Capstick's just got to pick him up here. We're going to game number 2.
Yeah, that was just an ideal draw from the Orzhov Vampires deck. Had Capstick on the back foot as early as turn 3 with that huge play of Sorin Imperious Bloodlord into Champion of Dusk, drawing 3 cards and just had the pressure coming so quickly.
So players going to sideboards. We'll start with Julian John. He has 4 copies of Noxious Grasp, 3 Duress, 2 Gideon Blackblade, 2 Plaguemare, and a Johnny Adversary of Tyrants, a Cast Down, a D-Spark, and a Disfigure.
So you might say, okay, I saw Hero Precinct 1. I need to bring in some ways to kill it. Well, that's not really the way that you attack this Esper Hero deck. The Hero Precinct 1's kind of gained this incremental advantage over time. And if you have a bunch of removal spells in your deck, chances are that you're going to draw them and they're not going to draw a hero and they're going to be pretty bad. You can also expect the Esper Hero deck to side out Hero Precinct 1 in some instances because they are going to be bringing in sweeper effects like Kaya's Wrath and Cry of the Carnarium, so it's a lot harder to leverage those tokens profitably. What I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this Esper Hero deck like a control deck. I'm going to bring in Duress. I might bring in some number of Noxious Grasp because that can kill the Hero Precinct 1 or Elite Guard Mage while also being able to deal with either of the Teferis. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop Narset, but I still think it's okay. But I don't think I want all 4. Gideon Blackblade seems like a home run. More Planeswalkers to diversify your threats a little bit with the Johnny Adversary of Tyrants. And maybe the D-Spark, but there's not a ton of hits. Just big Teferi and Elite Guard Mage and maybe some random thing like Bolts of Citadel.
On the sideboard for Capstick, 1 Cry of the Carnarium, a D-Spark, 2 Kaya's Wrath, 2 Disfigures, 2 Duress, 2 Noxious Grasp, 2 Dovin's Veto, and 3 Thief of Sanity.
Here I think you want to go pretty hard on the removal and just kind of become the control deck. Noxious Grasp can be okay, but it doesn't deal with the Planeswalkers really that Julian's going to be throwing at him. Those Thorns, of course, are black. Noxious Grasp also doesn't deal with some of the black vampires, so it's kind of like a halfway decent removal spell in a literal sense. So I'm not really keen on it, but it might come in just as a way to kill, the Legion Lieutenant and maybe a few other things down the line. Disfigure seems like a no-brainer because it kills without the Vanguard and all the 1s and 2 drops that the deck does throw out. Kaya's Wrath, Cry of the Carnarium seem like pretty fine additions as well.
Players playing in the Open this weekend were able to pick up a 5 set of the new personality tokens. We got this promo running in July and August. You can get them for participating in invitational qualifiers, opens, and purchases of $20 or more on StarCityGames.com.
Yeah, I really like the personality collection that we've been doing here at Star City Games. You can see this awesome zombie army token of Cedric Phillips. Love it. I'm actually quite jealous.
Speaking of being jealous, the Andrew Ellenbogen Vampire token, token generated by the deck he won the Pro Tour with.
Yeah, of course, Legion's Landing does provide you that white life-linking Vampire.
Ross Miriam Elemental.
Now, Elementals are getting a lot of use lately. The new Chandra 3 that costs the Acolyte of Flame makes 2 Ross Miriam tokens. Works with Young Pyromancer, works with Seasoned Pyromancer, and a couple others. There's a lot of play to this Elemental. Ross has picked a nice one.
Sam Black Clue token. Some nice nostalgia in there. Kind of the Lantern of Insight homage going on.
Yeah. Does the picture on Lantern of Insight actually have a bunch of eyeballs?
It's a great question, Todd. I'm glad you asked. And the 5th token, Dylan Hand Elemental token. Don't see too many Voice of Resurgences anymore, but it's one that he likes.
Yeah, I mean, Voice of Resurgence is an iconic card, and a lot of times if you get a chance to be a token, just pick the card you like the most. You know?
For sure.
Yeah.
It's something for you. Looks like players maybe wrapping up sideboarding. One update on the back table. Looks like Steve Stillman up a game in the Phoenix Mirror against Robert Long. Yeah,
that matchup, a lot of times it comes down to, it does have eyeballs all over it. That's really cool. Kudos to whoever created Sam's token.
Looks like Insight was a pun. Never knew that.
Nah, me neither. I've probably seen that card in play like 100 times or so, too.
Oh, at least.
It was always like low on the draft picks because it doesn't really do anything. But when you start combining it with a bunch of deck manipulation of your opponent's deck, then it starts to do something nice.
Really don't see it anymore, but Lantern Control, despite it not being my style of play and generally not a deck I enjoy watching, is a deck that was still really endearing to me because it existed first as a modern deck, which is rare.
Yeah.
A lot of decks have standard parallels, legacy parallels before modern rolled around.
Mm-hmm.
That deck was just a pile of cards that until it was built were just draft commons.
No, for sure. Was it Zach Elsick the first person who played Lantern at Grand Prix and I think took like first or second place with it, actually? Maybe beating Brian Brown-Dune in the finals?
I'm a little fuzzy on the history. I know that he was one of the early adopters of the deck. I want to say that there was a pretty large online community that developed it.
Sure. I don't ever want to take away credibility from certain deck builders, but as far as I can recall, Zach Elsick was the first person I remember seeing playing the deck on the top 8 stage. And it was really, really good, and it was one of the most annoying decks to play against, but usually that means that it's a great deck.
When it first rolled around, nobody had a plan for it.
Yeah, 6 months later, no one had a plan for it either.
Right, yeah. For a while, people were just kind of losing to it.
And that had a lot to do with just the functionality of the archetype, you know. You play a Lantern of Insight, you make sure that the top card of their deck isn't something that interacts with you. You play an Ensnaring Bridge, the end.
The Lantern control deck is designed to systematically eliminate the possibility that your opponent can win the game.
Yeah, you start somewhere around like 60% to win, and then next turn it's 70, and then eventually it's 99, and then 100.
All right, players looking at their 7s here. I believe that we've both kept. Tapped Hollowed Fountain is where Capstick will start.
Let's see if Julian John can come out of the gates firing like he did last game. It's the key to really punishing these as for hero decks is making sure you have a good curve. And with a new London Mulligan, I think mulliganing into a good curve is going to be desirable.
Basic Plains into Legion's Landing for John. Turn 2 for Capstick. Isolated Chapel into Hero of Precinct 1.
All right, so that answers the question of whether or not Capstick left in the heroes. Looks like he did. So if Julian John has a couple pieces of removal, he might get paid off.
Second land, also Isolated Chapel for John.
Yeah, we're still grabbing that Andrew Ellenbogen Vampire.
Danto Vanguard's a turn 2 play. And now we'll see if Capstick can start to get some velocity going with the hero in this game.
Yeah, it looks like he has a Disfigure, which is a perfect answer to the Adanto Vanguard. We're getting busy.
Attack with the hero.
Maybe he expects a double block from Julian. Julian doesn't take the bait, though. A Disfigure would have been a complete and utter blowout.
So hero connects. John to 18. Post-combat, we see a Watery Grave tapped, and we'll go back to John. Check for that turn 3 Sorin Imperious Bloodlord.
Yup. Looks like he's got the third land in another Plains. His hand looks relatively black heavy, aside from what looks like a Gideon. I guess he just kind of shoves in here with these two creatures. Post-combat plays Gideon. But may plus it before combat to give that Delta Vanguard lifelink, or even Vigilance, perhaps.
He's going to take his time thinking about it. There's a few instances that Capstick could be representing here.
Yep, Tyrant Scorn, Disfigure, Cast Down, a couple others, but for the most part, those are the ones that Julian's got running through his head. Disfigure, a newer reprint from Zendikar block, if I'm not mistaken. Good to see that one back. We had Deadweight for a little while in Standard a year or two ago. Loved that one.
So here's an attack with the Adanto Vanguard. Capstick's going to disfigure that one. That plays. Vanguard's dead. One of the few ways to cleanly and efficiently answer a Vanguard.
Yeah, for sure.
Plains will be land number 3 for John, but another Vanguard will be the cast. It looks like a 1-mana follow-up, Knight of the Ebon Legion.
And this is just a signal from Julian that he's trying to transform this Legion's Landing at all costs. So here, Capstick really needs to knock off at least one of these creatures if he wants to keep that Legion's Landing from transforming. And then it becomes a question of what do you play? Do you play the Hostage Taker, or do you play the Oath of Kaya? It looks like he's going with the former.
Drowned Catacomb into Hostage Taker. Make a token. Grab your Adanto Vanguard. Won't be able to cast it just yet. But John, not likely to be particularly heavy on removal. A Sorin could take down the Hostage Taker.
Yeah, Sorin, an Oath of Kaya of his own, some spot removal spell, maybe out of the sideboard. A couple of different ways he could clean this Hostage Taker up, but if he doesn't have it, it means that Capstick's going to start pulling further and further ahead, because as the game goes longer, the Esper Hero deck just has such quality for individual cards as the games go, whereas the Vampire decks really rely on synergy between a lot of different moving pieces in order to gain a significant advantage.
And Capstick is still at 20. Really comfortable life total at this point in the game.
Looks like Julian's hand, he has a Najani, a Gideon Blackblade, and 2 1-mana vampires that he could potentially deploy. Second, Knight of the Ebon Legion and a Sky Marcher Aspirant.
He'll start with Sky Marcher Aspirant, a second Knight of the Ebon Legion, and he'll pass the turn. now Capstick is untapping with the ability to cast the Adanto Vanguard from here.
And you're going to bet he's going to cast it pretty quickly. This is just to make sure that he gets full value out of it. Second main, he's going to play an Oath of Kaya and knock off something. My guess is he's going to take care of one of the Knight of Ebon Legion just because those are quite annoying once the game goes late.
Yep, Knight down. Second hero token shows up. Capstick to 23 off the Oath.
Notably, that also leaves John with only 7 permanents. So if he draws a land, he can only get up to 9 permanents.
Capstick, considering an attack with the Hostage Taker, decides against it. He'll pass to John.
Yeah, he wants to basically max punish John if he swings with all 3 creatures and transform the Legion's Landing. I like the play of holding back, at least for this turn. John's got to know that, if he doesn't transform this Legion's Landing like right now, there's a chance he doesn't get to do it at all.
Well, this could be big. Here's land number 4 in a Johnny, Adversary of Tyrants. He'll plus that, puts a counter on the Knight of Ebon Legion and the Vampire token. Not able to attack just yet, though. He'll have to pass.
Yeah, there would be some really profitable blocks from Capstick if Julian had wanted to attack there with all 3 creatures and transform the Legion's Landing. Bunch of combo blocks. We found an Ellenbogen.
About time.
A lot of times what happens over in that judge spotter area is that they pull out a bunch of tokens for one instance and then they don't get put back in the right spot. They kind of just sit on the table sometimes. But we got there in the end.
Capstick going to get aggressive. Adanto Vanguard attacking a Johnny. Has some life to play with that.
I do like this attack. There's no real great block from Julian. But it also makes sure that Johnny is not going to hit ultimate anytime soon.
And that attack just gets through a Johnny to 2. Capstick will play a Watery Grave tap and pass to John. And there was no good blockers on the Vanguard last turn. Now John can use it a Johnny to get up to 4 toughness with one of his creatures, the Knight of the Ebon Legion.
Yeah, I can also deploy a Gideon Blackblade here. Don't know if he wants to put a counter on it specifically because it can be attacked down from the opponent. And it's got a pretty big target on its head.
And so here is Gideon.
My guess is, well, I was going to say plus for Vigilance, but I don't even really see a great attack.
Gives him the City's Blessing.
Yeah, that 10th permanent, so now he can plus to give the Sky Marcher Aspirant Vigilance if he wants. And then also put a +1/+1 counter with the Johnny.
See him thinking through how he wants to use these 2 Planeswalkers. Plus on a Johnny, targeting the Aspirant and the Knight of the Ebon Legion. That resolves. Gideon pluses, targets the Aspirant, as you mentioned, likely Vigilance here, fly over for 3 damage.
As life is not in jeopardy and he wants to protect his Planeswalkers as much as possible. So Vigilance makes a lot of sense here.
So there's the attack for 3, Capstick back to 20.
Andrew, 1-drop, nice.
Another Sky Marcher Aspirant.
Flying is a great way to kind of blow past these 1/1 tokens from here at Precinct 1.
And we'll go back to Capstick. He'll draw for turn. Facing down 2 Planeswalkers that are making life a little bit difficult on his side of the table.
Wow, I think Capstick drew a Kaya's Wrath, so if he so chooses, he can pay 4 life, put an indestructible shield on the Adanto Vanguard, cast Kaya's Wrath, gain some life, and then attack down the Johnny Adversary of Tyrants. He's still got to deal with the Gideon Blackblade, but that's a different calls for a different time for that one.
Yeah, Kaya's Wrath is huge here.
He also has a Tyrant Scorn, so a lot of permutations of plays this turn.
Yeah, he has 6 mana, so he could do something like pick up one of his creatures and then Kaya's Wrath. Going a different route, though. There's Tyrant Scorn destroying the Knight of the Ebon Legion.
I think he just wants to hold on to the Wrath for as long as possible. This allows him to attack the Adonto Vanguard at Johnny, and maybe send some other creatures at the Gideon. But my guess is just these, the Adonto Vanguard and the Hostage Taker coming in, so they're a little bit harder to block.
You see the Vanguard and the Hostage Taker attacking. Vanguard at the Ajani, Hostage Taker at the Gideon.
That means the Gideon's going to stay alive no matter what. So this is just a decision here for Julian Johns. Do I chump block or do I just let the Ajani fall? And with those 2 flyers, the 2 Skymarcher Aspirants, it might be worthwhile to just jump the Andrew Ellenbogen token into the Adonto Vanguard. Next turn, make 7 power worth of flyers, and just kind of race all this stuff on the opposing side of the battlefield. You can keep using Gideon to give the Skymarcher Aspirant vigilance, so it kind of makes it awkward if they want to attack. So,
right. Vampires jump in front of a Adonto Vanguard. Or not.
I think it should. I think that's a decent check to keep the Ajani on the battlefield for 1 more turn. And worst comes to worst, you can just minus on the Ajani and get back a creature. So the only reason not to block would be if you desperately want to flip Legion's Landing next turn.
It looks like he pulls it back to no blocks, getting to 3, Ajani down.
Well, he's got something else in mind, and that's fine. We're going to have to see what it is here.
So John will draw for turn back on his side. He was empty-handed going into this turn. Plus his Gideon, thinking about the target.
I think he's going to give the Ellenbogen token vigilance, attack with everything, transform the Legion's Landing. He's going to have 2 blockers, so if Capstick wants to deal with the Gideon, maybe give it indestructible. That way it could churn on in and not die in combat. Seems okay.
And then everything's coming across. Gideon, both aspirants, and indestructible lifelink vampire token.
If I'm Capstick, I'm just blocking for max prevent here. What he can do is, he only has to attack Gideon for 4. So with the Hero Precinct 1, that's flying, so that can't be blocked. But not a whole lot of profitability with the blocks here. So just like chumping the Gideon makes the most sense.
Playing out a little combat math for the next couple turns, lands on putting a token in front of the Gideon and the Vampire token. So 5 flying comes across, Capstick to 15. John will gain 2 life back to 20.
John here has the capability to activate the Adonto, the first fort. It looks like he drew Champion of Dusk as his draw for the turn, but doesn't have a second black.
Yeah, can't cast that one. Even with that 5th mana from the Adonto, the first fort, it's just 4 white and 1 black.
Yeah, it's kind of the downside of playing that kind of even 2-color mana base where you're 7 plains, 7 swamps. Capstick here going to send everything at the Gideon more than likely. He can actually hold back the Shaheen token here, I think, to chump block next turn if he so chooses.
So every creature is attacking Gideon. We have Hostage Taker, Soldier Token, Hero Precinct 1, and Adonto Vanguard. And Gideon goes down.
All right, now Capstick going to need to basically race against these flyers or find a way to deal with them. The problem is if he casts Kaiserwrath right now, it's just going to be Adonto Vanguard versus Adonto the first fort. And I think that the Adonto first fort is going to win.
So he paid 4, and here is that Kaya's Wrath.
So he's going to gain 4 back, though, because the Kai's Wrath does gain some life. But that sweeps up all the creatures from John's side. Now we got a good old-fashioned race.
So Capstick back on 15, tapped Hallowed Fountain. John and Step will make a Vampire token. We'll go back his way.
Yeah, perfect spot to draw an untapped black mana source for John. Let him draw 2 cards and make a 4/4.
Yeah, hand going into this turn was just Champion of Dusk.
Even if I drew the black mana, there's a chance that I would want to wait one more turn to maybe draw 3 cards. The problem is you get completely demolished by a Thought Erasure. But here it is, that second black. We're going to draw 2 gain, or lose 2 life. And now we're pretty far ahead.
So he gained 1 off of the attack, which put Capstick to 14, and then deployed the champion. So he'll be at 19, but does get to draw some cards.
Yeah, and the Champion of Dusk is large enough to just brick wall the Adonta Vanguard.
Just Drowned Catacomb go for Capstick. This game looked good for Capstick early, but it looks really good for John now.
Yeah, I think the key turning point was just leveraging those Planeswalkers for a little bit of added value. Capstick felt like he was a little farther behind than I think he actually was, and I think he blew the Kaya's Wrath about a turn or two too early. And now he's facing down quite a bit of power here from Champion Dusk, the Vampire token, and an active of the first fort. And we got more to go.
And here is Sorin Imperious Bloodlord.
Looks like we're going to play that, probably get a plus to put a counter onto Champion of Dusk would be my guess. That way you can just swing in and gain 5 life. Now Capstick can block and put an indestructible shield on there.
So Sorin did target the champion. It is attacking as well as the vampire token.
I think Julian is actually sandbagging a land tier too, and he can play that post-combat and make a 1/1 token off the first fort.
From the attack, John gains 5 life to 25, and then Capstick down to 8. Knight of the Ebon Legion for John, and Capstick's seen enough. Julian John, 2-0. Orzhov Vampires over Esper Hero.
Yeah, I think we were getting a lot of very similar beats there last week in Worcester. 2-0 for Julian John, that Vampire deck really showing off. Got hit with multiple removal spells, got hit with a Kaya's Wrath, had to face down a Hotch's Taker that stole an Adonta Vanguard. You know, Capstick's draw was not bad. He did flood out a little bit in the last few turns, but I think if he had maybe stretched his resources a little bit, he might have actually had a good shot to win that game. Julian John there played that pretty well. We're moving on here to see who takes down the match, though, because this is, of course, a team event.
Yeah, moving over to the Legacy seat, David Long and Golgari Depths against Lucas Cruz on 4-color control. Cruz up a game. Long setting up for that Depths combo, though. You see Thespian Sage on the battlefield and Sylvan Scrying grabbing Dark Depths.
Yeah, and now he doesn't have to play another spell in order to get this 2020 active. Just playing 2 more lands or even like a land and a Mox Diamond or something can threaten that 2020 pretty quickly here. So all the Force Wills in the world aren't going to save Lucas.
Force of Wills are no good, though these 4-color decks often have some stuff like an Edict. And how about a Wasteland on Thespian Sage? That'll certainly slow Long down.
Yeah, that's a nice one right there. I'm curious if Lucas has access to Surgical Extraction on the sideboard, because I know that's one way that I really like to punish these Thespian Stage Dark Depths deck is by popping off half of their combo and then using Surgical Extraction to take it away completely.
Yeah, there are 2 Surgicals in the sideboard. Long is going to sacrifice a Verdant Catacombs. Falls to 18. Finds a second Bayou.
Another Sylvan Scrying. There it is.
Yeah, Sylvan Scrying it is. This would be the time to Surgical. I guess once he finds Thespian Sage, because he has already played a land this turn.
Yeah, I would wait for him to go get Thespian Sage, put it in hand, and then Surgical, if he has it. I'm not 100% that he does have it, he just has access to it.
Right. In the Modern seat, everything is tied up. They're going to a game number 3 in the Is It Phoenix Mirror.
They're going to draw.
That is a way to take the wind out of your sails at the end of a long day.
Oh, yeah. 6, 1, and 2 to go into day 2.
Ugh.
So Arkham's Astrolabe from Lucas Cruz, a newer addition to Legacy out of Modern Horizons. And there it is.
Yeah, Surgical Extraction, Thespian Sage. I know you got one of those. Take a look at Long's hand. Abrupt Decay, Wasteland, Dark Depths, and Liliana the Last Hope.
Now, the way this deck is constructed, though, the Surgical Extraction on Thespian Sage is not a straight lockout of the Dark Depths token. David Long's deck plays Vampire Hexmage as one of its key creatures to help power out those really quick Merit tokens. So he still is live. Still has a lot of play left.
Yeah, Liliana Last Hope can actually win games.
Yeah. And there actually seems to be a Vampire Hexmage actually in the graveyard that was taken with that Thoughtseize early on. So next turn, if he wants, Dave can play the Liliana the Last Hope, maybe minus, get back Vampire Hexmage, and threaten a 20/20 on the following turn.
We'll see what he wants to do. Cruz will pass. There's a Wasteland, and here's Liliana, the Last Hope. And Force of Will, pitching Brainstorm will catch that one. Cruz to 14. Liliana countered.
Let's just switch.
We'll go to Cruz. He has a Renin 6 in hand, but he can't cast that despite the Astrolabe. Just 3 lands that only produce blue and black.
That's pretty funny. The Force Will knocking off the Liliana the Last Hope, though, is pretty nice for Lucas. He's not under an immense amount of pressure. And if he does find another colored source here for the Renin 6, he can go pretty, get back Wasteland and be kind of set up nice and pretty.
Just going to use a Brainstorm to try to fix the mana or maybe find something else to cast. Land on Long's turn was a Nurturing Peat land, so we'll have a redraw.
Let's just go and switch the other match, because no matter who wins this match, it doesn't win the match. Who wins this game, it doesn't.
He'll cast Thoughtseize. All right, so this one might go on for a little bit, but the modern match might decide what happens, the outcome of the full match here. So we're going to go ahead and go over to the modern table here. Game 3 of the Is It Phoenix Mirror.
Yeah, this is potentially a match-deciding game 3 between Robert Long and Steve Stillman. If Long takes down this game, that means his team actually wins the match and is locked for day 2 at 7-1-1. There's a chance that David Long wins game 2 there, and we actually just don't even see the end of the match. So we'll make sure we bring you as much magic as possible.
Stillman on the play here. Spire Bluff Canal into Sleight of Hand.
I used to think Sleight of Hand was just worse than Opt in the deck, but the more I played Is It Phoenix, the more I really like Sleight of Hand, especially now that Narset Parter of Veils has become a reasonably sized portion of the format.
Yeah, you play a lot of sorcery speed and not actually drawing the card. Like you said, that matters a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you also just dig with more knowledge, right? Like if you cast an Opt, the top card could be okay, but the bottom card could be a little bit better, and you might want to actually take the bottom card. With Sleight of Hand, there's no question. Plus, with Finale of Promise, you need to make sure you play a reasonable number of sorceries, and Sleight of Hand seems like the biggest no-brainer of them all as far as the swap is concerned.
Second land for Stillman was Scalding Tarn. Long sacrifices Flooded Strand and shocks for his Steam Vents to Thought Scour himself end step. Flipped over a Magmatic Sinkhole and I believe another land. His second land will be an island.
Now, there are 2 key parts of the early game here in this Is It Phoenix Mirror match. The first is whether or not you can resolve a thing in the ice, or whether or not you can put an Arclight Phoenix or 2 onto the battlefield. The second is a check of whether or not your opponent has a removal spell, force that thing in the ice, and if they do, then that gets to the next stage, which is, do you have Aria Flame? Or, I guess in Drake Sasser's case, do you have Pyromancer Ascension?
Well, Long's checking that first box on having the turn 2 thing in the ice. We'll see Stillman fetch at the end step to 19 for a tap Steam Vents. Generally, if you're answering the thing in the ice, it is at sorcery speed. He will opt end step, though.
Now, you may be like thinking to yourself, why does he play Opt and Sleight of Hand? Well, I think there's a pretty common trend going on right now to play 3 of one and 1 of the other to kind of give a little bit more balance to Finale of Promise. Because you're not playing Pyromancer Ascension, there's no reason to you're having to play 4 of any one card, you know.
Mm-hmm. And Stillman does have the Flame Slash to answer the thing in the ice. Cast that after playing Polluted Delta as land for turn.
Now, Flame Slash is a card that I'm a huge proponent of in the main deck of Is It Phoenix. I like playing 2. The Lava Darts that Jerry Thompson talked about were okay in my testing process, but more often than not, Flame Slash just checks the creature you want, and you discard Lava Dart a ton to Faithless Looting, and it just kind of acts as a free spell like a gut shot, but occasionally providing you with that 2-spell burst you need on important turns.
That's just good deck building.
Yeah. I do really like some Flame Slash, though. But here, we're going to go full-on protection mode. That's a Force of Negation here, targeting the Flame Slash.
Yeah, thing in the ice, if you can protect it, that ends the game really quickly.
That is nice. Now, if you're Stillman, if you got Spell Pierce or something like that, you're going to want to fire it off on the Force of Negation because you need to make sure that this thing there does not transform.
And there's Spell Pierce. That's just good, clean living.
Yeah,
Flame Slash takes the thing in the ice down.
And that was a little dangerous to go for the Force of Negation, but you don't put it into your deck to not cast it. And that was a prime spot to protect Thing in the Ice. And unfortunately for Robert Long, Stillman just had the Spell Pierce at the ready.
Stillman will fetch to 18 for a basic island. Now has cast 2 spells this turn, so a random Thought Scour Miracle Phoenix could happen. Serum Visions, though, so now it can't.
A lot of times in the mirror after sideboard, I actually quite enjoy hard casting Phoenix on turn 4, just because it kind of makes those surgical extractions rot in your opponent's hand.
Yeah, that's a good point. So he draws, and looks like he scried both to the top.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, one is an Arclight Phoenix, so he might be going for a big turn next turn.
Robert Long just 2 for 1 himself with that Force of Negation. Had his Thing in the Ice die. Let's see how we can claw back into this game. He'll shock to 15 and cast a Seasoned Pyromancer.
Yeah, this is a card that I thought might actually find a home in Izzet Phoenix when it was first previewed. Seasoned Pyromancer generating a lot of pressure here. 4 total power. Going to change Faithless Looting into 2 fresh cards.
And 2 elementals.
Yep.
Anytime you can discard Faithless Looting for value feels really good.
Yeah, for sure. And after sideboard, Faithless Looting is a lot worse in the mirrors because sometimes they have Narset Part of Veils, but oftentimes they just have Surgical Extraction, which completely negates your Faithless Looting Arclight Phoenix draws. And so then it just becomes card disadvantage.
The Pyromancer is good for 4 power. Now Stillman's turn. He'll want to answer that or get a threat of his own going. We'll see him cast Serum Visions. So now he's drawn both of those cards he's cried to the top. Perhaps it's setting up a Faithless Looting with that Arclight Phoenix he said he spotted.
Yeah, but the thing about Pyromancer here, the Seasoned Pyromancer from Robert Long's side of things, is that it either needs to be dealt with via a Thing in the Ice, in which case it'll just come back down on the following turn, or you need to just have a boatload of different pieces of removal to deal with it. And, just generate extra bodies, a lot like Lingering Souls. It just makes it a nightmare for decks with spot removal in their deck to really churn through.
Second spell for Stillman is Faithless Looting. It's going to be 1 Arclight Phoenix and a land discarded.
Yeah, now the question is, does he have another spell to play to get back Phoenix? 1 mana. Goes for the Magmatic Sinkhole. Likely going to knock off the Seasoned Pyromancer, even though it does have that activated ability from the graveyard. Just represents the most pressure.
Carefully delving to make sure you leave the right cards in your graveyard.
Yeah, that's going to return the Phoenix unless Robert has that Surgical Extraction.
So Seasoned Pyromancer down, Arclight Phoenix back. Long to 12.
Yeah, so Stillman's in really great shape here. That winning the fight over the Thing in the Ice on turn 3 was a huge deal. And now on 4, getting that Arclight Phoenix back. Still has a couple cards in hand to boot.
And now those elementals, they just don't race the Arclight Phoenix. Long is behind on life total, so he'll have to turn things around here. He'll start with these Serum Visions, draws. Scry 2.
Now, if Robert can accrue an Arclight Phoenix or 2 of his own to play defense, he's got some life left in him still. Got a lot of card draw in your deck to find removal spells if you need them. How many times can they bring Arclight Phoenix back? Well, the answer is
a lot.
As many times as they have 3 instant sorcerers in their deck, which
whatever
is
it takes.
Roughly 10 to 12 or whatever. It's a lot.
Right. Kind of the deck's whole thing. Both cards scry to the top.
All right, Mr. Long, what you got?
At first it looked like he might have been convinced that 1 was for sure going on the bottom, but a new plan has been formed.
Robert conferring with his teammates on how to play this. Second spell for the turn is going to be a sinkhole on Arclight Phoenix, and this might actually end up being a surgical extraction to take them all out.
So Phoenix is felled by the sinkhole. Not very flavorful. Long will cast Serum Visions. I got a gripe with the naming of the card Magmatic Sinkhole.
What's that?
Played with the card Roast for many years. Showed up in Modern sometime. 5 damage to a non-flying creature.
Yeah.
This card is a sinkhole. Destroys creatures indiscriminately.
It still deals 5. I mean,
it's a flavor thing, Todd.
Are you telling me that like sinkholes in general just do more than 5 damage? Is that your argument?
No, is that sinkholes are on the ground and flying things fly.
Fair enough.
And there's that surgical extraction. Arclight Phoenix exiled.
Looks like we have an update on the back match. Lucas Cruz takes his match 2-0 against David Long's Golgari Depths. That means that this third and final game between Robert Long and Steve Stillman is for the match and potentially for a Day 2 berth.
Yeah, it all comes down to this. And you see a hand of double Narset for Stillman when the surgical finishes resolving.
Yeah, but I'm pretty confident that Rob actually has a Narset of his own on top of the deck from the Serum Visions. And Rob has pressure on the battlefield. And if you're kind of in a Planeswalker battle, the person with any amount of pressure on the battlefield is going to be slightly advantaged.
Definitely doesn't hurt. There's something else, though, as a tap of 2 Stillman's looking at.
Possibly he drew Thing in the Ice, and he was thinking about playing that instead of the Narset.
And that's what he does. He'll cast Thing in the Ice.
All right, now if Rob finds a way to pop this Thing in the Ice, he can start attacking a bunch. But a Narset's a pretty good follow-up there to his previous turn.
He'll activate that. Takes a look at 4 cards. Finds an Opt. Looks like an Arclight Phoenix is going to the bottom off of that. Attacks with both elementals. Thing blocks 1. Stillman to 15. No Lightning Bolt, so we'll go back to Stillman.
I would have liked to main phase the Opt, just because if you hit a 5th land that comes in play tapped, like a Steam Vents, you don't want to deal damage to yourself. Spy Bluff Canal is going to enter the battlefield tap. You want to be able to activate the ability of the Seasoned Pyromancer in the graveyard with as little downside as possible. But maybe not. Spell Pierce here, a huge pickup for Robert, able to knock off that Narset before it comes down.
Yeah, the first of 2 Narsets for Stillman, met by Spell Pierce. And he'll pass back.
Well, that certainly changes things quite a bit here. Let's see what Robert can find off this second Narset activation.
Hand is Thought Scour Opt. He's going to activate Narset before he thinks about casting those Finale of
Good
Promise.
Lord.
Julian John says, hey, pick that one.
Yeah. You don't got to be a world-class player to know that Finale Promise is messed up in this situation.
Difficult to sinkhole to Finale Promise to get back Magmatic Sinkhole, but there are a few good options in the graveyard.
Yeah, even if it's just draw 2, it's very likely to find one of the couple, they usually play 2 to 4 answers for Thing in the Ice in the deck between main deck and sideboard. And this is just a huge burst of card advantage and card filtering, maybe even like targeting Serum Visions and like Opt or whatever. Can even surgical the Narset out of the graveyard from Stillman and get the one in his hand.
And that's where he seems to have landed. Surgical Extraction and Serum Visions. So get rid of that Narset from your graveyard. More importantly, get rid of the one I know about in your hand. Leave you with just that Scalding Tarn.
Should only be 2 Narset. I believe he's already looked through the deck. So now we're going to resolve Serum Visions. So we get to draw Scry 2. And Robert, I got to say, you're in a great spot, buddy.
It is looking nice.
Even has a Phoenix on top of the deck with a Thought Scour in hand, so he's going to mill that over that right now, get it back immediately, and chunk in for 4 damage.
And another Faithless Looting going to the graveyard as well. Long probably relieved and surprised to see that 5th land in Stillman's hand.
Yeah, but if Stillman just draws a chain of draw spells here, he could still potentially win this game with Thing in the Ice. Finale of Promise would also be pretty busted, but it doesn't draw a card because of the Narset, so he's got to figure out a way around it.
Looks like the draw was Manamorphose. You almost have to cast it on Long's turn so you actually draw the card.
I mean, that's certainly fair, and with just a land in hand, I think you're right. Narset static ability just always wamboozles me.
So Stillman will pass. Long will fetch an end step. Life total's Long at 9, Stillman at 11.
So now we can chunk in for 4 more damage, and then if we so choose, we can Season Pyromancer or Faithless Looting.
End step, we see an Opt from Long, a Scry to the bottom. Now he will untap. Looks like Force of Negation was the draw. That one, not likely to be a big factor in this game, but it's something.
I mean, it certainly could just cold a spell off the top, right? Just for 3 mana, you can just hard cast it.
I think it's likely to be discarded to a flashback Faithless Looting.
That's certainly fair, but
And that's not nothing. I mean, the looting's doing the heavy lifting, but this is a big tap. Yeah, he still has that Seasoned Pyromancer from the graveyard. He's going to make 2 more elementals. Doing this on his own turn, that's interesting.
just trying to get as much pressure on the battlefield as possible, and it plays around a top-decked Surgical Extraction from Stillman.
Here's an attack with 2 elementals and the Arclight Phoenix.
Now we're going to cast this Manamorphose here. We're going to draw a card because it's our opponent's turn. We can draw 1 each turn. Pickup looked like a Serum Vision. That seems like a dead card to me.
Yeah, not great. Stillman 2-7 will go to his turn. We know about Scalding Tarn and Serum Visions. Those ones are duds. You can still scry 2 with the Serum Visions.
Yeah, that's one of the upsides here. Even in the face of a Narset, which is super bad for you, you do get that scry 2. And
Thing in the Ice now down to 2 counters. Stillman picked up another Manamorphose and can keep an instant on top. He could transform the Thing in the Ice on Long's turn.
yeah, and he can even do it during combat so that the Arclight Phoenix can't be like discarded to Faithless Looting or something.
Keeps a card on top, scries 1 to the bottom.
Means we have a plan. Now, Long actually still has that Force of Negation in hand with a blue card, if I'm not mistaken, so we'll see how this goes. It might just be a pass, and if Robert Long just uses Force of Negation on the Manamorphose, he's going to take a huge chunk, but he might just win on the swing back. This is a really tight game.
So here there is the pass. We are in turns, so Long is turn number 2. Both players at 7.
7, kind of the magic number here for Stillman, because he does have that Thing in the Ice, which can transform into a 7-power creature while bouncing all the potential blockers from Long's side of things.
7 also the power that Long currently has on the battlefield.
Right, but I think he doesn't have an answer to Thing in the Ice, or else it would have come across rather quickly.
So here's an attack. Thing's going to block an elemental token. That's forced. Stillman to 1.
I actually think Stillman's about to steal this game.
Long thinking about some post-combat action. I would think there has to be something pretty good in the hand if he didn't just flashback Faithless Looting, and there is. Aria of Flame, trigger on the stack, Manamorphose, 1U.
Holy crap, Robert found the line. Aria Flame trigger to gain 10 on the stack. Cast Manamorphose, do that 1 point of damage before